have the same person on stage. Thank you for volunteering twice. So right now, London and Daniel may establish practical questions. Suppose we do have this RRR file with rates of transitions, but we do need occupations of orbitals as function of time and maybe average energy of electronic system to see how the energy dissipates in various vibrations, how charge transfer happens, like what to do with this RRR file, with this set of rates.
Yeah, so this is just getting results from our dynamics, so it doesn't go in depth how it exactly computes the rates for all these, but it's just showing where the relevant parameters are that you need to change to generate the figures to analyze later. So the needed files that you need is, so there are a lot of dynamic script names floating around, but this is usually the most reliable starting point to start with, is this one. And then usually if there are changes, there's additions after the 3. So depending on what you use.
So what does it mean HSP at the end?
I don't know, I've always thought about it, but nothing quick came to mind, so.
Maybe you will remember.
Yeah, because previously she was a group member at USD. So I guess she modified this code.
So it's abbreviation of the name Huang Shuping.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I have seen that name.
Okay.
And then this must have been his 3rd attempt.
Probably.
So if you modify the script, just add your initials after.
If you discover an error, it'll be your name, named after you. So this is the general script to use for dynamics, and then you just have to feed in a couple of files. So input overlap, energy pop like normal. So then the last 2 talks talked about how to make RRR, so we feed that into the dynamic script. And then for visualization, sometimes you want the band out. That would be for like standard vast calculations, and then there's also been an update that Dimitri has been working on for spin orbit coupling band outs. And that's not in this script, that's a different one. So if you do need that at some time, you can contact one of us, we can dig it up from somewhere.
Can you briefly, in like one sentence, summarize what is standard band out and how does it relate to main interest of London, charge transfer?
So band out basically just takes power charges, which are written as 3D in space, and it just compresses them into 2D, and usually,
or maybe 1D.
Or yes, it's 1D. So it projects them along X and Y, and then we can see along Z. So usually, whenever we make models, if we want to look at stuff like landedness for charge transfer, you have your hole and acceptor and donator along Z. So
and band out is just one file that summarizes all orbitals together.
Yes. So it reads in all the power charges corresponding to your energy pop or input overlap. And band out, there's a Perl script somewhere in the bin. And then for these, there's a MATLAB code that you have to use to generate this.
So one of the band integrate scripts generate this band out. And if you want to inspect the transfer of charge carriers, you will need to create this file. You just skip it right now to be short and fit in time.
Yeah, so then you feed in these files, and then the outputs that you get if it runs healthy is energy relaxation and for your average energy of your carriers, and then where they go in space as they relax, which is from the band outs, and then it also computes rates of relaxation from your initial conditions to the band edges. So when you first load up the script, this is what it looks like to begin with. So you have IH and IE. So those are just your initial conditions that you choose for your hole and your electron. And I forgot to mention in this, but 1 in both of these cases is HOMO and LUMO. So if you wanted to do HOMO minus 20 to LUMO plus 20, it'd be 20, 21, and 21. So whatever your LUMO plus Y is, you just add 1 to that for IH and IE. So, and then Well, in principle, you could just do a bunch of random numbers and put them in there, but just to save time, good numbers to do would be orbitals from your oscillator string, so most intense transitions are transitions that you're interested in looking in. So that depends on your system and it's just something you have to know as you're processing the data. And then some parameters that you have to change depending on the system, so Z steps and Z size. So Z size is from your postcard, so the size of the Z dimension. And then Z steps corresponds to your band out, so it's the number of like grid points along the Z axis, so your resolution basically. And you get that from band out, so whatever the size of that is. And just a couple other things you have to input to your HOMO, and then Omin and Omax from your energy pop file. And then a couple other parameters you can play with. So there's time steps, so that's basically your resolution and time, so how many like increments it does. So I don't know, I've never had to mess with it too much, but depending on how fine a data you want, you can increase this by just increases the runtime of your simulation. And you might get small variations in your rates just because, well, if you don't run as many steps, you're in coarse grain, so you might miss some transitions. So the higher that you increase time steps, probably the more accurate your results are going to be. So you can play with that until your rates are pretty consistent, and then optimize it that way. And then, so that's number of grid points in time, and then you can also change the length of your dynamics in time. So generally, stuff we're interested in occurs on the nanosecond time scale, and that's what this is set up for at the moment. But if you wanted to increase, like say you wanted to go to millisecond for some crazy relaxation, so he would just increase this until, well, I put a halt in a strategic place and just keep increasing the number until it goes to where I want. But you can figure out other convenient ways to change this number too. So changing this box number increases the time of the simulation. And then those are really the only other two parameters worth messing with in the program. And then it runs healthy. So this will pop out at the bottom. KE and KH are your rates of the electron relaxes to the band edge, which in this case should be NA. Like these don't correspond with each other. And then K hole would be the time it goes from here to here. So if you do have like 2 multi-relaxation steps, like it won't give you one for each. You have to do some extra legwork to be able to get those transitions. So you get rates, you get these pretty figures. So this is relaxation in energy space. And then this would be for band out from like a standard calculation. So blue is your hole. So you see at the time the hole goes up, the electron stays down. So that indicates you have a charge transfer that occurs in your simulation. So that should be it.
Okay, well, thank you. Any questions? Can you go to the last slide? If I would see it for the first time, I would be able to follow interpretation of the first green figure, where your y-axis is probably energy.
Yeah, so when you run these, there are labels on them, but I usually cut them off when I post-process them. So yeah, I would say this is energy, this is log time.
Okay, and for the second green figure, what is y-axis?
So this would be like your Z size.
So it's Cartesian, it's Z coordinate.
Yeah. So this looks like, I don't know, 15, so 30.
In angstrom?
Yes.
Okay.
So basically the Z component of your postcard is what it should be. And then the x-axis is again log time.
And green means that electron and hole are approximately in the same space region, or they compensate each other. But if it splits onto blue and orange, it means there is some charge transfer.
Yes, that's what it indicates anyway. Usually you want to take like a VMD of your model, you just kind of place it so it looks roughly the same, so you know for sure that it's charge transfer.
Okay. More, okay, David?
So how did you calculate the relaxation rates?
So well, that was one of the prefaces for this presentation. I wasn't going to talk about how the code does it, but basically it just, so it takes all the input orbitals and it produces like a superposition based on your initial condition, and then it does a time step, takes the RR file, computes relaxation from, like, if you're at LUMO plus 20, and they would calculate the rates of relaxation to all the orbitals below it,
Okay, up to
or
frontier
possibly above
orbital.
it.
I mean, up to LUMO, frontier orbital.
Right, and then it just does that each time step. So it's a average relaxation rate. So at each time step, it doesn't compute a new rate. So it's the same rate throughout this whole simulation.
So you calculate relaxation in every time step, and then
Yeah, so you give an initial population, or do you want to say something?
Oh, no, complete your explanation and then I'll intervene.
So the way I understand is you tell your initial population. So you do a time step, tells the RRR tells it where to send the population, does that again. So then you have like maybe 3 bands that are populated a little bit, and then RRR tells population from those where to go. And then you just kind of get a steady, well, usually you get like a steady waterfall of population of your bands.
But that population is not maybe initial population is maybe 1, final one maybe 1, but intermediate is that 1 or is like
It's
fraction of
Fraction because it is
It
distributed
is
between several
distributed
orbitals.
so the sum should be 1.
yeah.
So if we repeat same activity next year, maybe waterfall picture would be helpful to understand what is going on.
Yeah, I thought to put it in, but I guess I just didn't. So
Just to keep addressing question of Jabed, what are the dashes and solid line, and how are they related to the rates of transfer or relaxation?
So those are energy expectation values for each. So dash just for electron, and then solid is energy expectation value for holes. And so based on those, you can calculate relaxation rates.
In that case, rate is changing with the time, right?
Yep, but you can feed it to different functions, starting from the simplest mono exponential, but you can also try to select more complicated fitting function.
And we assume single exponential, well, for regular, like from this code.
But in this case, seems like your whole relaxation rate is not a single exponential.
Right, but basically what it calculates, it takes the time from here to here, it just takes the inverse of it. So you have this relaxation from here to here, but you don't have any information about the intermediate.
Then how about the electron relaxation rate? Because it seems like it stayed on the same energy over time.
Yeah, it doesn't. So the initial population was LUMO, that's what the initial condition was. So then it's already at LUMO,
So
so there's no relaxation.
energy relaxation rate for electron is not reasonable in this example.
Right, because it's
Because it's 1.63, seems like it's
Or maybe you started from LUMO plus 1, something like very close in energy.
I think this figure I was trying to do a waterfall for this image, so I didn't care about the electron. So this should be like if you're doing like a real calculation, like from an optical transition, like this would be up here. Relax now. This is not something we would publish.
More questions to Aaron? Daniel? London? Okay, let's thank Aaron once again. And we have 2 talks for the next 15 minutes. Number